Good morning. Hi, welcome to my kitchen. It's Michelle with Garden Jargon, and I wanted to share with you some two little fails I've had this week. Well, actually, 2 days ago and today. I went to the grocery store because I was in the mood for some Italian food that I plan to cook today, which is Sunday on Labor Day weekend. Italian food, and I got all the ingredients out today to cook this Italian meal that I can eat later in the day because it's going to take all day to cook it. And I realized I couldn't find my Italian bread, this big old loaf of bread, and couldn't find it. So I went back to my car to go to the store to pick up another loaf of bread and realized I left it in my trunk, which all that did was give me a loaf of bread that's hard and crunchy now. Like, this is like, I could probably kill somebody with banging this on somebody's head because it's so hard because I left it in the trunk for a day, 2 days now. So that was my first fail. My second fail was it is now finally one of the first days since May that we've had rain all day. It's now 11:30 and it's been raining since 4 this morning. We've gotten about 1.5 inches of rain. It hasn't been a downpour, but it's about 1.5 inches of rain, and I'm so grateful. And this morning when I heard the rain around 4 a.m., I looked at my clock. I realized I like to harvest. I didn't realize this, but I like to harvest water. I have a rain barrel that comes down from the gutter, fills a 55-gallon drum, and then I use the hose, and I'll fill up like 5 or 6 different 5-gallon buckets, some 5-gallon water jugs, a 55-gallon tote, and like a 40-gallon tote, because I'll use that water, that rainwater, through the entire week in my garden. And at 4 in the morning, I literally got inspired to go outside to start harvesting this rain because it's a process. When it's raining hard and that water's coming through the barrel and the water's coming out the hose, you have to move the hose from container to container in order to harvest this water. Well, I didn't get to harvest the water because I just stayed in bed at 4 a.m. So I come out this morning at 8 and I go outside to see how much water was in that 55-gallon drum because it should have been overflowing with as much rain as we got. And I left the spigot on. Yeah, epic fail. So all the rain that we got from 4 a.m. to 8 when I went out there, the spigot on my 55-gallon drum was open, which means that it did fill up a tote, a 40-gallon tote, but then the water overflew out of that tote until I went out there this morning at 8 a.m. I lost several gallons of water. So 2 epic fails here. Didn't get to harvest as much rainwater as I wanted to, but we are getting more rain later today, a pretty significant amount, which I'm very excited, and I will be prepared. And my second epic fail, not really epic because it's like $1.50, but this bread turned extremely hard, which leads me to the next, my furry fairy, which leads me to the next reason why I'm going to be making this video, which is my homemade crouton recipe, and I hope you enjoy it. This is a different view in my kitchen, but I wanted to share with you my crouton recipe. I think I've watched it on YouTube several times and I've kind of come up with my own little recipe. So what I'm going to do is I have these Torino baby sub rolls, and I'm going to use these first because they have gotten hard. I just didn't use them fast enough, and I'm single so I should freeze them and then use them as I need them, but I forgot. So this is the Torinos that I've already chopped up into cubes because they're a little bit hard already. So these aren't very soft, but they're not crispy like what you would get if you roasted them in the oven. I preheated my oven already to 375. 1 second. Okay, I wanted to turn off the fan. I didn't know if that was distracting in the background. But I go ahead and I slice these little mini rolls in half, and then I just cube it up. And you can tell that I'm not smashing the bread because it's actually quite hard already. So I just cube these up and I put them in a big bowl. In my croutons, I do not use butter. I use a really good olive oil. Some variations of that recipe, you can use infused olive oil if you like to infuse it with peppers or garlic or anything like that, you can use that type of oil. I mentioned 375 is going in the oven right now. I use classical olive oil, and I just drizzle over the bucket. I know there's some shadows here because I'm not in a studio here. I'm just in my kitchen, so that's how professional I get. I toss, and then I drizzle a light stream. I'm not dumping. I'm just tossing this olive oil all over these croutons just to get a couple dribbles on each one of these bread cubes. And you'll be able to see it if it's a good quality olive oil. It's yellow. And you can kind of eyeball your croutons to see if they've gotten some oil on it. Don't want to leave any croutons out. I don't measure anything when I make croutons, so you have to just kind of eyeball it yourself. And I've made these croutons several times, and I've made different variations of it. You can see my sister's dog back here. I'm watching him. He will lay underneath your feet. If I turned around right now and tried to move, I would land on him. Okay, so I think all of the croutons have a little bit of olive oil on them, as you can see. So what I do at this point, the crazy thing about croutons is when you're making a crouton, you don't have to have seasoning on all 6 of the sides in order for the crouton to taste good. Because when you eat a crouton, the whole crouton goes in your mouth. So whatever flavor might be on just this surface right here is the flavor that's going to explode in your mouth when you eat it. So I'm not too keen on seasoning my croutons while they're in this bowl because I want to kind of control how much I'm putting on each crouton. I don't like an overpowered flavor on a crouton. I do like a good flavored crouton though. So I have some cookie sheets that I'm going to lay these croutons on. Single layer on a cookie sheet. I might be able to get them all on here. But I am going to make 2 batches. My sister loves croutons and her girls love the croutons, so I like to make them for everybody and share them. It's just like canning pickles or stuff like that. You got to share it. So that's all the croutons. Let me rinse my hands. All right. Now the ingredients that I use for my croutons is adobo, just the original adobo seasoning. Extremely salty, but has the garlic flavor that I want. And that way I can use this instead of salt and garlic powder. Parsley, because my Italian seasoning doesn't have parsley in it, but I do like parsley on my croutons. And then also Parmesan cheese, which actually adds even more salt. So with my adobo seasoning, I literally lightly sprinkle it over the top of my croutons. And I hold the tray up almost at eye level and I watch as I drizzle this stuff over the top just to make sure that I know that it's an extremely light coating. You can always add more if you want it. You cannot take it off if it's too much. So I do a light sprinkle of that. Italian seasoning, as much as you want. Like I said, I don't like an overpowering crouton flavor. I just want a little bit of flavor. You can barely see the seasoning on the crouton so far. Parsley, I'm going to use pinches and sprinkle over the top just like this. Just a little bit. There we go. And then the Parmesan cheese. I sometimes do this when I'm not making a video over the sink because I do make a mess. Just a light coating. And I'm not going to toss this. It's going to be just fine the way it is. So I'm going to just taste test one. This one looks like it has a lot of good flavor on that one surface. Delicious. I think there's plenty. I'm going to try one more. I can use a little bit more adobo. A little bit more salty. Just a tiny bit. I'm going to do a little more cheese. And through time, you'll be able to make these over and over again and tweak your recipe every time you do it. There's even times I've made croutons and used some crushed red pepper on them too. And those I like to use in soups. Okay, so now that I made a complete mess with the Parmesan cheese, I'm going to go ahead and toss this into the oven with this tray just like this. You heard the oven beep earlier. My oven is preheated to 375. Halfway through, right around like 8 minutes, I'm going to take it out. I'm going to toss them around. So I just threw the tray in the oven, and now I'm just slicing up my hand and my croutons. Of course I cut my hand when I'm making a video. Hold please, I have to go dress my cut. Okay, I'm back. Now I'm not going to slice my hand. And I've washed off my knife. But this hand's been giving me trouble. I just sliced my hand with the knife, and what did I poke my hand? Oh, glass. I cut my hand with glass right here yesterday, and now I have this cut. So I'm being challenged with sharp objects. I maybe need to stay away from them. So this bread is just about the same kind of hard as the Toronto rolls were, which is good, because you really want to make some croutons with day-old bread. You can leave it out in the air and let it just kind of dry out on its own. But these will work just fine. That cookie sheet that I just made that you saw that I was putting in the oven, that was about 5 cups of croutons. And it does shrink down when they bake, but that was about 5 cups. I measured them earlier to see how many that was, because I use airtight containers to put my croutons in. I got these at Goodwill a while ago, but this is what I keep my croutons in. It says you can keep them for up to a week. This has a rubber seal around it, and they stay airtight in here for a very long time. I've had croutons for up to a month in here, and they're just fine. Mickey, that's not yours. No. My sister's animals are eating my dog's food. He won't eat his. He wants to eat Molly's food. All right. Well, I'm going to continue cutting this bread up, and I'm going to make a whole nother batch, but I will pull out the croutons when the timer goes off and show you what the croutons look like as I toss them. And then we're going to stick them in to finish off the baking process in the oven. And we're back. So I think that the oven is either not normal temp because these got a little burnt around the edges at 8 minutes. So this I just pulled out of the 375 oven, and it was in there for 8 minutes. I'm not sure, it could be because of the brown tray instead of like a non-coat, non-stick tray. Mickey, no! And so these guys on the edges got a little burnt. The ones in the middle look perfect. Usually you just toss them up and put them back in the oven, but they ended up turning out quite nice. Look at that little crouton. So another trick, you need to let these cool completely to room temperature before you put them in an airtight container, because if you Put them in an airtight container. When they're still warm, the steam will stay inside the container and make these moist instead of crunchy. And you want your croutons crunchy. So that's my crouton recipe, everyone. I hope you enjoy it. Try it a couple times. It's how much money for bread? Not too much. Plus bread you're just going to toss if it gets a little bit stale. So you're using a little bit of olive oil and a little bit of seasonings. But try different seasonings. I did bump the oven down to 350 for my next batch to see if that helps. And I'm also using a different kind of pan. So you just kind of play with this recipe. But this is one of my favorites. I'll eat the brown crunchy ones on the edges. And I'll store the ones in the center. But I hope you enjoyed my video. As always, thank you for watching. I wish you the very best in your gardening adventures. And I hope to see you in the next video. Take care and God bless.